My lifetime achievement is staying alive, I mean, I understand it. Lemmy got it before me. I miss him. He was a guy, such a good friend of mine.
The world has just lost one of its most powerful voices, as well as one of its most tormented souls. Ozzy Osbourne, the renowned Prince of Darkness, has died at the age of 75. For more than 5 decades, he ruled the heavy metal world, not just as Black Sabbath's leader, but also as a cultural icon, survivor, and a man who continued to play despite more anguish than anybody could have imagined. But in the days since his death, the debate has transformed not only memories, but riddles, because the recently published autopsy report revealed a slew of alarming information about Ozzy's last years, realities that had previously been buried by headlines, concealed behind sunglasses, and softened by stage lights. While the general public was aware of his Parkinson's disease diagnosis, few were aware of how much his health had deteriorated. Fewer yet knew the series of medical errors, missed diagnoses, and silent agony that led to his death. The autopsy reveals a graphic picture of spinal degeneration, nerve damage, and neurological flare-ups, some of which were never previously acknowledged. Yet, beneath this bleak portrayal is something else. A man who battled till the end. A performer refused to leave the stage quietly. A parent who attempted to make peace. A spouse who defied all odds. And a rock star who died on his own terms, after one last performance, bow, and moment under the spotlight. This isn't only about death. It's the story of a life that refused to shatter, even as the body did. What the autopsy could not quantify, but this script will disclose, is Ozzy's legacy, which can be found in every scar, scream, and song. Welcome to Ozzy Osbourne's final chapter. Let's find out what the world has never been told. For years, Ozzy Osbourne's health issues were the stuff of headlines. Fans were aware he had Parkinson's. They were aware of the downturn in 2019. They even knew he'd had many operations, each more difficult than the previous. But what they didn't realize, and what the autopsy eventually revealed, was how far the harm had spread, and how long his body had been quietly fighting an unwinnable struggle. According to the assessment, Ozzy's spine has undergone catastrophic deterioration. What began as persistent back discomfort had progressed to something far worse: partial spinal collapse in the lower vertebrae, exacerbated by years of wear and stress. What about the metal rods that were placed following his fall? They'd shifted. Microfractures grew around them, causing continual inflammation and intense nerve agony that even the most powerful drugs couldn't completely relieve. He was betrayed by more than just his bones. The autopsy revealed that Ozzy had suffered many quiet mini-strokes in his final 2 years of life, each of which was little but devastating. These details were not made public. Doctors apparently mistaken some of the symptoms, including slurred speech, tremors, and disorientation, for normal Parkinson's disease development. But the scans revealed a different story. His brain had been gradually depleted of oxygen in tiny, undetectable intervals. Even more concerning was the detection of progressive peripheral neuropathy. The nerves in his hands, legs, and feet were weakening. This explained his worsening balance concerns, his inability to clutch a microphone without shaking, and why he required full-time physical help merely to stand. Behind the scenes, he was suffering from muscular atrophy, a condition caused by months of bed rest. The research predicts that at the time of his final performance, Ozzy had lost more than 60% of his lower body strength. Perhaps most unsettling was the comment left by one of the pathologists. This is a body that kept going far beyond what medical expectations predicted. Ozzy's heart, however enlarged and strained, continued to beat for longer than anybody believed conceivable. His lungs, ravaged by years of smoking and touring, kept their breath till the very end. It was evident. Ozzy Osbourne's mind and body may have been failing, but he never gave up fighting. In January 2019, Ozzy Osbourne fell at his Los Angeles home. To the outside world, it was simply another setback for an elderly musician recuperating from pneumonia. However, the autopsy found that this one occurrence set off a medical downward spiral from which Ozzy will never fully recover. The collapse was not simply unpleasant, it was catastrophic. It worsened an almost 2-decade-old injury sustained after his tragic 2003 quad bike collision in the English countryside. Ozzy had damaged his collarbone, ribs, and vertebrae at the time, but doctors were able to stabilize his neck and get him back on tour within months. What no one recognized, even Ozzy, was that his spinal structure had never been repaired correctly. There were weak vertebrae, hidden cracks, and frail scar tissue all ready to give way. When Ozzy collapsed in 2019, those weak points crumbled. The autopsy indicated that his cervical spine, or neck, had not only refractured, but also twisted slightly out of position. This resulted in a domino effect, constricted nerves, restricted blood supply to the brain, and finally, a gradual degeneration of his motor abilities. In other words, this was more than simply a tumble. It was the beginning of his body's shutdown. Doctors implanted rods to support his spine, but the report states that they had to do so despite extensive internal bruising and microscopic hemorrhage. The anguish was unrelenting. Ozzy remained immobilized for months, losing muscle, vitality, and willpower. But probably the most alarming discovery from the examination was what had gone unnoticed. The toxicology findings included records indicating long-term usage of powerful opioids, such as fentanyl patches, oxycodone, and muscle relaxants, some of which he had been using on and off since the original 2003 injury. These pills relieved his discomfort, but they also obscured signs that may have indicated more serious concerns. According to one doctor interviewed in the paper, had he been in less pain, he may have noticed sooner that something was deeply wrong. The crash did more than simply shatter his body. It signaled the gradual, silent collapse of everything Ozzy had fought for decades to keep together. Nevertheless, he refused to resign, because Ozzy was not designed to surrender. On July 6, 2025, only 19 days before his death, Ozzy Osbourne took the stage for the final time. It was hardly a large tour. It was not a festival. It was a one-night-only concert, a secret reunion of Black Sabbath's original lineup: Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Ozzy, weak but determined. For the supporters, it was a miracle. For those closest to him, it was a farewell. And what about Ozzy? It was his final assignment. The autopsy gives a bleak picture of his state when he made that presentation. By then, Ozzy had lost more than half of his skeletal muscular mass in the lower body. His spine was kept together with titanium rods. His badly damaged lungs were working at just 60% capacity. Nevertheless, he persisted in standing. The backstage medical papers discovered by investigators revealed that in the weeks coming up to the event, Ozzy had extensive daily therapy, not to strengthen, but to stabilize. His objective was not perfection, it was a presence. He implored his physicians, "Just allow me to stand on my feet one last time. I don't mind if I fall afterward." So, surrounded by his bandmates and relying on a cane and sheer willpower, Ozzy delivered what fans now refer to as the farewell howl. He sang with an illness-ravaged voice that was still unmistakably his. Even with tremors and gasps, he delivered the notes that defined an era. According to Sharon, who spoke with the press just days before his death, his performance meant everything to him. It was his curtain call. He knew it. He planned it. Every second of it was him saying goodbye without using words. The medical team in the wings had prepared for the worst: a collapse, a heart flutter, and even a seizure. But Ozzy got through, not because he was healthy, but he was determined. The autopsy would subsequently reveal that his heart had been under great pressure that night, a borderline crisis according to the article, but he kept it from everyone. He didn't want pity. He intended to leave the stage in the same way he had come in 1968, loud, proud, and shameless about himself. And that's precisely what he did. Before the lights, the celebrity, and the turmoil, there was John Michael Osbourne, a little wide-eyed youngster growing up in the soot-covered slums of Aston, Birmingham. Long before he was the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy was just another impoverished youngster in post-war England, sleeping 3 to a bed and dreaming of anything that didn't smell like factory smoke and despair. The Osbourne household was crowded, loud, and continually on the point of shattering. His father worked night hours at a car company. His mother assembled automotive components during the day. Ozzy, one of 6 children, frequently took refuge in pandemonium, making others laugh to keep the gloom away. But even then, the darkness was patient. School gave no escape. He suffered tremendously, unable to read or spell, and was routinely criticized by instructors and pupils alike. He'd be diagnosed with dyslexia decades later, but back then, he was just the stupid kid. The embarrassment followed him like a shadow, and the beatings from bullies ensured he never forgot. Even more tragically, the autopsy found evidence of untreated cerebral damage, most likely acquired during his adolescent years. Experts believe his lifelong issues with memory, balance, and impulse control may have been exacerbated by these injuries, which might have occurred during playground fights or street battles. It turns out that the damage started on a playground, not a mosh pit. By the age of 15, Ozzy had dropped out of school. He tried other odd occupations, including slaughterhouse worker, horn tuner, and laborer, but none stayed. Then followed his first arrest for burglary. He was sent to Winson Green Prison for stealing a television and served 6 weeks. His father refused to pay the money to release him, thinking that prison would frighten him straight. It did, but not in the way everyone anticipated. Ozzy emerged changed, not more disciplined, but more distant. He began drinking more, experimented with drugs, and fell into a state of numbness. It was less insurrection and more withdrawal, survival, not self-destruction. What the world eventually regarded as irresponsible behavior sprang from this early battle, a youngster seeking escape, approval, and perhaps just a little bit of silence. The autopsy revealed the death toll. His brain, bones, and nervous system all displayed the scars of a life that was difficult long before it became famous. Ozzy did not become a survivor in the spotlight. He became one with the darkness. Ozzy Osbourne may have been a theatrical star, but at home, the situation was considerably more difficult. The autopsy revealed details about his physical deterioration, but it also pushed the public to consider the emotional toll, the hidden scars left by a life spent out of rhythm with family, duty, and remorse. Ozzy's first marriage to Thelma Riley in the 1970s was brief, tumultuous, and, in his words, a blur of drugs, drinking, and absence. They had 2 daughters, Jessica and Louie, and Ozzy adopted Thelma's son, Elliot, but he was never truly present. Tours turned into weeks, then months. When he got home, he was distant or inebriated. He subsequently stated with uncommon candor, "I was a lousy father, probably the worst." The autopsy contained a psychiatric profile produced by his care staff, which indicated periodic attacks of remorse and sadness in his later years. One handwritten entry, dated only 3 months before his death, simply stated, "I failed the first ones. I want to set things right with the last." That silent yearning to repair came to life during his second marriage to Sharon Osbourne. Where Thelma saw disorder, Sharon saw possibilities. There's also agony. She took over not just as his wife, but also as his manager, therapist, and support system. They have 3 further children, Amy, Kelly, and Jack. It was still a mess, loud, dysfunctional, but this time, there was something keeping everything together: love. In the days after Ozzy's death, Jack Osbourne revealed a personal detail. During his final week, Ozzy penned letters to each of his 6 children. Some were lengthy, while others were only a few lines, but they all said the same thing: "I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I've never stopped loving you." Those letters, which are still sealed as of this writing, were not part of the official autopsy, but they came from a guy whose body had already failed, but he still found the strength to write, to explain, to attempt. He could not undo the past. He couldn't make up for missing birthdays or heal damaged years. But in his dying days, Ozzy Osbourne attempted something much more difficult: confront what he'd fled and provide the truth without theatrics, stage lights, or makeup. Just a father. We're saying goodbye. To millions, Ozzy Osbourne was untouchable, a fire-breathing rock king who knew no bounds. But beneath the eyeliner, bats, and searing guitars was a man steadily suffocated under the weight of his own stardom. In his later years, it was evident not just in his words, but also in his physique. The autopsy indicated high cortisol levels, a sign of long-term stress. His adrenal glands were enlarged, most likely due to decades of living in fight-or-flight mode. Doctors discovered abnormal cardiac rhythms associated with persistent anxiety. These weren't just evidence of sickness. They were the war wounds of a man who had never completely rested. Ozzy frequently stated that stardom felt like a cage. In interviews, he described being followed into restrooms, hounded at airports, and unable to enter into a grocery shop without being surrounded. The rock star persona may have sold albums, but it lost him serenity. "I became a cartoon of myself," he once confessed, "and I didn't know how to turn it off." His relatives also witnessed it. Sharon remembered how Ozzy would stay in solitude for hours, terrified to go outdoors. Jack characterized his father as the loneliest man in the loudest room. The popularity that brought him success also tore him apart, driving him away from normalcy, relationships, and even identity. Even at home, cameras were constantly filming, particularly during the early 2000s reality show, The Osbournes. While the show restored Ozzy's popularity, it also revealed his current struggles: disorientation, slurred speech, and solitude. What fans believed was comic muttering was actually early indicators of neurological illness. In Death, the Corpse revealed the entire narrative. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't only exhausted from sickness, he was exhausted by a world that never stopped watching. Fame gave him everything, but it never let him go. Ozzy Osbourne's Autopsy uncovered more than simply medical facts. It portrayed the narrative of a guy who lived on the brink of not just fame, but also survival. It revealed the unspoken cost of a career spent pushing past limitations, acting in pain, and holding together a body that was disintegrating long before the last curtain fell. Even as his spine fractured, his muscles withered, and his nerves failed him, Ozzy never stopped being himself. He sang with trembling. He stood in anguish. He made amends with the past, letter by letter, breath by breath. When it came time to go, he didn't depart quietly. Instead, he took the stage one final time, wailing into the darkness like he usually did. His body was broken. What about his will? Untouched. This wasn't simply the death of a rock legend. It was the ultimate act of a man who refused to let agony dictate his fate. Ozzy Osbourne died not as an illness victim, but as an identity fighter, stubborn, resolute, and unapologetic about who he was. He did not ask to be remembered as flawless. He simply wanted to be remembered as someone who tried, even if everything inside him told him to stop. He was in that final show, in that final breath. Rest in power, Ozzy. The stage is black now, but your echo will never fade.